Hey there, welcome back. I'm here to help you relax tonight. Before we slip into the shadows, like and subscribe to uncover more stories like this. Let me know in the comments where are you listening from and what time is it there. It really brings our community together. Now, dim the lights for that cozy vibe and stick around till the end. Let's dive into the unknown. I pulled into the parking lot of Thornwood & Sons Funeral Home at 5:45 p.m., 15 minutes early for my first shift. The building sat at the end of Maple Street like a Victorian mansion that time forgot, all dark brick and peaked roofs. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary as I stared at the place that would become my life for the next 6 months. 6 months to pay off $30,000. That was the deal my father's creditors had offered after his gambling debts caught up with him. 6 months working nights at this funeral home, or they'd take our house. My mother and younger sister would have nowhere to go. The job posting had been specific. Night shift mortician's assistant. No experience necessary. $30,000 for 6 months of work. The pay alone should have been my first warning, but desperation makes you overlook red flags. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the employee entrance around back, as the email instructions had specified. The door opened before I could knock, revealing a man in his 60s with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been professionally arranged into permanent solemnity. "Marcus Chen?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Yes, sir. Theodore Thornwood. I run this establishment." He stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. "Come in. We have much to discuss before your shift begins." The back hallway was narrower than I expected, lined with framed photographs of the funeral home through various decades. The air smelled of flowers and something chemical I couldn't quite place. Theodore led me past several closed doors to a small office at the end of the corridor. "Sit," he said, settling behind an antique desk covered with neat stacks of paperwork. "Your application mentioned your father's situation. I'm sorry for your family's difficulties." I nodded, unsure how to respond. The last thing I wanted was pity. "The position you've accepted is unique," Theodore continued, pulling out a leather-bound notebook from his desk drawer. Thornwood & Sons has served this community for over 100 years. During that time, we've developed certain specialized services for particular clients. "Specialized services," I repeated. "Our standard clientele receives traditional funeral services, viewings, memorial services, burials, or cremations. However, we also cater to families who require more specific accommodations." He opened the notebook, revealing pages filled with handwritten rules. "These accommodations come with strict protocols that you must follow without exception." The way he emphasized those last two words made my stomach tighten. "I'm going to give you a list of rules," Theodore said, his eyes meeting mine with unusual intensity. "These are not suggestions. They are requirements for your safety and the safety of everyone in this building. Breaking them will have consequences. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." He turned the notebook towards me. "Read these carefully. You'll need to memorize them." I pulled the notebook closer and began reading the handwritten list. Rule 1. Always keep special clients covered with the provided silk cloth. Never remove it completely, even during preparation. Rule 2. Never remove any jewelry found on special clients. Rings, necklaces, watches. Leave them all exactly as they are. Rule 3. If a body sits up and speaks to you, you must answer its questions truthfully. Never lie, never refuse to answer. Rule 4. Never be in the preparation room alone between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. Always work with your assigned partner. Rule 5. If you hear your name called from inside a casket, do not open it. Find Theodore immediately. Rule 6. special clients must be prepared before midnight, no exceptions. Rule 7, never look directly into the eyes of a special client who has opened theirs. Keep your gaze lowered. Rule 8, if the temperature in the preparation room drops suddenly, leave immediately and lock the door behind you. Rule 9, never eat or drink anything offered by a special client or their family members. Rule 10, trust William. If he tells you to do something, do it without question. I looked up from the list, my mouth dry. Special clients? Theodore closed the notebook. You'll understand soon enough. Your partner tonight is Cassandra Rivera. She's been with us for 2 years and knows all the protocols. Follow her lead exactly. And William? You'll meet him shortly. He handles security matters. Theodore stood, indicating our meeting was over. Cassandra is waiting in the preparation room. I'll take you there now. We walked back down the hallway, passing more closed doors. Theodore stopped at one with a heavy lock and keypad. He punched in a code, and the door clicked open. The preparation room was larger than I expected, with white tile covering every surface. Stainless steel tables gleamed under bright fluorescent lights. Cabinets lined one wall, and I could see various instruments laid out on a tray near the closest table. The smell of formaldehyde and antiseptic was overwhelming. A woman stood beside the far table, arranging supplies with practiced efficiency. She looked to be in her late 20s with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and sharp features that suggested she didn't tolerate nonsense. She glanced up as we entered. Cassandra, this is Marcus. He'll be working with you from now on. Theodore looked at me. Cassandra will show you the basics tonight. Standard preparation procedures apply to most of our clients. Special protocols only apply when I specifically tell you they're necessary. Cassandra nodded but didn't smile. Got it. Theodore left without another word, the heavy door closing behind him with a solid thunk. I stood awkwardly near the entrance while Cassandra continued her preparations. First night? She asked without looking at me. Yeah. You read the rules? Yes. Good. Most new people don't take them seriously until something happens. She finally looked at me directly. Take them seriously from the start. It's safer that way. I wanted to ask what she meant by something happens, but her expression suggested she wouldn't elaborate. Come over here, she said, gesturing to the table. I'll show you the standard procedure first. We have a regular client coming in later tonight. For the next 2 hours, Cassandra walked me through the basics of preparing bodies for viewing. How to position them properly. How to clean and dress them. How to apply cosmetics so they looked peaceful rather than artificial. Her instructions were precise and professional, treating the deceased with careful respect. At 9:30 p.m., Theodore returned with a clipboard. Cassandra, we have a special client arriving in 10 minutes. Prepare accordingly. Cassandra's expression changed subtly, becoming more guarded. Understood. After Theodore left, she moved to a locked cabinet and removed a folded piece of fabric that shimmered under the lights. Dark blue silk with silver thread woven through it in patterns I couldn't quite make out. This is the cloth from Rule 1, she said, setting it carefully on a clean table. Never let this touch the floor. Never let it get damaged, and never, under any circumstances, remove it completely once it's placed. What happens if you do? I asked. Cassandra looked at me with something that might have been pity. You don't want to find out. Trust me on that. A buzzer sounded, indicating someone had arrived at the delivery entrance. Cassandra straightened her shoulders, taking a visible breath before heading to the door. I followed, my heart beating faster than it should have been. The delivery entrance led to a small receiving area with a hydraulic lift. A black van idled outside, and 2 men in dark suits were unloading a casket. Not a body bag, but an actual casket, which struck me as unusual for a delivery. The men moved with practiced efficiency, transferring the casket to our gurney without speaking. One of them handed Cassandra an envelope, nodded to both of us, and returned to the van. The entire interaction took less than 2 minutes. "Help me wheel this inside," Cassandra said. The casket was heavier than I expected, clearly made of solid wood rather than the cheaper materials most families chose. Intricate carvings covered its surface, patterns that reminded me of the silk cloth's design. We brought it into the preparation room. Cassandra locked the door behind us and checked her watch. 9:47 p.m. We have until midnight to complete the preparation. "Why midnight?" I asked. "Rule 6. Special clients must be prepared before midnight." She opened the envelope, scanning its contents. "Male, 63 years old, name withheld. Family requests traditional viewing tomorrow at 2 p.m. She set the paperwork aside and approached the casket. "When I open this, don't react to what you see. Stay calm, stay professional, and follow my lead exactly." My hands felt clammy as I moved to the opposite side of the casket. Cassandra's fingers found the latches and she slowly lifted the lid. The man inside looked like he was sleeping. Expensive suit, hands folded across, his chest, face composed in peaceful rest. He wore several rings on both hands and a gold watch on his left wrist. Nothing seemed unusual about him except for one detail that made my breath catch. His eyes were open, not glassy and vacant like death should have made them. Open and staring at the ceiling with clear, focused intensity that suggested awareness. "Get the cloth," Cassandra said quietly, her voice steady despite what we were both seeing. I forced my legs to move, retrieving the blue silk cloth from the table. When I returned, the man's eyes had moved. They were now looking directly at Cassandra. "Good evening, Mr. Castellano," she said calmly, as if addressing a living person. "We'll be preparing you for tomorrow's viewing." The man didn't respond, but his eyes tracked her movement as she took the cloth from my hands. She unfolded it carefully, letting it drape across his body from neck to feet, leaving only his head exposed. "Marcus, get the cosmetics kit from the second cabinet," Cassandra instructed. "We'll need to work on his facial appearance." I found the kit and brought it over, trying not to look directly at the man's eyes. But I could feel them on me, following my movements around the room with unnatural awareness. "Is he?" I started to ask, then stopped, unsure how to finish the question. "Special," Cassandra finished for me. "Yes, now let's focus on the work." For the next hour, we worked in near silence. Cassandra showed me how to apply cosmetics while keeping the silk cloth in place, never moving it more than necessary. The man's eyes remained open the entire time, watching us with that same focused intensity. At 10:52 p.m., as I was adjusting his collar, the man's hand shot out from under the cloth and grabbed my wrist. I jumped back, my heart slamming against my ribs, but his grip was iron tight. His eyes locked onto mine. "Marcus Chen," he said, his voice rough and unused. "Son of David Chen." Cassandra moved quickly to my side. "Remember Rule 3, she whispered urgently. "Answer truthfully." The man's fingers dug into my wrist. "Your father owed money to certain people I used to work for. Did you know that?" My mouth was dry, but I forced the words out. "Yes, he owed $30,000. And you're working here to pay off that debt." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. The man's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, though there was no warmth in it. "Interesting arrangement. 6 months of your life for $30,000. That's the deal," I managed to say. He released my wrist suddenly, his hand returning beneath the cloth. "Your father made many poor choices. Gambling destroys families, Marcus. You should remember that." I rubbed my wrist where he'd gripped it, feeling the indentations his fingers had left. "I will." The man's eyes closed then, and his features relaxed into genuine death. The awareness that had been present moments before was simply gone, as if someone had flipped a switch. Cassandra let out a breath I hadn't realized she'd been holding. "That was mild compared to some. You did well." "What was he?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "A special client. That's all you need to know." She checked her watch. 11:16 p.m. We need to finish and get him back in the casket before midnight. We worked quickly, completing the remaining preparations in silence. At 11:47 p.m., we carefully repositioned him in his casket, the blue silk cloth still covering his body. Cassandra closed the lid and locked it with a small key she kept on a chain around her neck. "Every special client's casket gets locked," she explained. "The family receives the key at the viewing. Never open a locked casket, even if you hear something inside." "Rule 5, I said, remembering. "Exactly." We cleaned the preparation room thoroughly, sterilizing every surface and putting away all our tools. By the time we finished, it was 12:23 a.m. "The rest of the night should be quiet," Cassandra said, removing her gloves. "We have a break now. Come on, I'll show you the staff room." The staff room was small but comfortable, with a couch, table, and kitchenette. Cassandra poured herself coffee from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there for hours. "Want some?" she offered. "Sure." We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the night's events. Finally, I asked the question that had been building since Mr. Castellano grabbed my wrist. "How is any of this possible?" Cassandra took a sip of her coffee. "You want a scientific explanation?" "I don't have one. All I know is that Thornwood & Sons handles special clients who exist in some kind of in-between state. Not alive, not fully dead. The rules keep them controlled, keep us safe. And if we break the rules?" Her expression darkened. 2 years ago, a guy named Derek worked here. Thought the rules were superstitious nonsense. One night, he removed jewelry from a special client. She set down her coffee cup. They found pieces of him all over the preparation room, literally pieces. The client was gone, never recovered. I felt sick. Why didn't they shut this place down? Because what Thornwood & Sons does is necessary. These special clients, their families need closure, need to say goodbye, and there are agreements in place, contracts that go back generations. This funeral home serves a purpose, and the rules exist to let us serve that purpose safely. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked. 2 years. My younger brother needed surgery he couldn't afford. Thornwood covered the cost in exchange for 2 years of my service. She looked at me directly. "I have 4 months left. Then I'm done, and I'm never looking back." The weight of my own 6-month obligation felt heavier suddenly. Do people ever leave early? Some try. The contract has clauses about penalties for early termination. Financial penalties that make the original debt look tiny. Cassandra stood, rinsing her mug in the sink. "My advice? Keep your head down, follow the rules, and count the days. 6 months will pass faster than you think." A buzzer sounded, making us both look toward the intercom on the wall. "Cassandra, Marcus, please come to my office." Theodore's voice crackled through the speaker. We exchanged glances before heading back through the corridors to Theodore's office. He sat behind his desk with a man I'd never seen before, standing beside him. The stranger was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair going gray at the temples. His eyes were the palest blue I'd ever seen, almost colorless. He wore a simple black suit with no tie, and there was something about his posture that suggested military training. "This is William," Theodore said. "Marcus, William handles security and special situations that occasionally arise. William studied me with those pale eyes, his expression unreadable. You did well tonight with Mr. Castellano. Not many people stay calm their first time with a talker. Ah, Cassandra helped, I said. Good. Listen to her, listen to Theodore, and listen to me. William moved closer, and despite his calm demeanor, there was something about him that made my instincts scream danger. The rules exist because people died when we didn't have them. Cassandra told you about Derek? I nodded. Derek was my partner before he got careless. I had to clean up what was left of him. William's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his voice. I don't want to clean up after another partner. Follow the rules, Marcus, all of them. I will, I promised. Good. William looked at Theodore. The Castellano family confirmed tomorrow's viewing at 2:00 p.m. I'll be present. Excellent, Theodore said. Marcus, you'll assist with the setup. Cassandra will handle the family. Standard protocol for special client viewings. After William left, Theodore dismissed us for the rest of the night. Go home, get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. I drove home as dawn broke over the city, my mind still processing everything I'd witnessed. The man who had grabbed my wrist, speaking with knowledge about my father's debts. The rules that seemed designed for horror movies but were apparently deadly serious. William's warning about his former partner. My mother was awake when I got home, making breakfast for my sister Lauren before school. How was your first night? She asked, trying to sound casual. We both knew what this job represented, the sacrifice I was making to keep our family housed. Different from what I expected, I said honestly, but I can handle it. Lauren looked up from her cereal. Do you work with dead people? Lauren? My mother's voice was sharp with disapproval. It's okay, I said, managing a smile for my 13-year-old sister. Yeah, I work in a funeral home. Someone has to help prepare people for their final farewells. That's creepy, Lauren declared, but she didn't look disturbed. Just curious in the way teenagers are about death. Sometimes, I agreed, but it's important work. After Lauren left for school, my mother sat across from me at the kitchen table. Marcus, you don't have to do this. We could figure out something else. Like what, Mom? Let them take the house? Dad made this mess, but we're the ones who have to clean it up. I immediately regretted my harsh tone when I saw her face. I'm sorry, I'm just tired. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. 6 months, then you're done with this and we can move forward. If I survived 6 months, but I didn't say that out loud. I slept fitfully through the morning, my dreams filled with open eyes and caskets and hands reaching out from under blue silk. When I woke at noon, I felt less rested than when I'd gone to bed. The viewing was scheduled for 2:00 p.m., which meant I needed to be at Thornwood & Sons by 1:00 to help with setup. I showered, dressed in the black suit Theodore had provided, and drove back to the funeral home. The parking lot was already filling with expensive cars when I arrived. Men in dark suits and women in elegant black dresses moved toward the entrance with the practiced solemnity of people who attended many funerals. I used the employee entrance, finding Cassandra already in the viewing room. The space was elegant, with deep carpet, tasteful wallpaper, and rows of chairs facing a raised platform where Mr. Castellano's casket sat open. Help me arrange these flowers, Cassandra said without preamble. Everything needs to be perfect. We spent the next hour making sure every detail was precise. The flowers arranged just so. The chairs aligned properly. The temperature comfortable. The lighting soft and reverent. At 1:45 p.m., William arrived. He took a position near the back of the room, standing still and watchful. His presence reminded me of security at high-profile events, though he wore no visible weapon. "Why does he need to be here?" I asked Cassandra quietly. "Special client viewings require extra oversight," she replied. "Sometimes family members get emotional. Sometimes emotions lead to people trying to break the rules, like removing jewelry, among other things." At 2:00 p.m. exactly, Theodore opened the doors and the guests began filing in. I stood near the wall, trying to be invisible while staying alert. Cassandra had told me my job was simply to observe and assist if Theodore needed anything. The guests moved past Mr. Castellano's casket in small groups, paying their respects. Some cried quietly, others stood in stony silence. A few leaned close and whispered things I couldn't hear. Everything seemed normal until a woman in her 40s approached the casket alone. She wore designer black and expensive jewelry, her face composed, but her eyes red from crying. She looked at Mr. Castellano for a long moment, then reached toward his hand beneath the blue silk cloth. William moved before I could even process what was happening. He was suddenly beside the woman, his hand gently but firmly stopping hers before she could touch the cloth. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said quietly. "Please don't touch the deceased." The woman looked at him, her eyes flashing with anger and grief. "That's my father. I have every right to hold his hand one more time." "I understand," William said, his voice sympathetic but unyielding. "But the preparation process requires that he not be touched. It's for everyone's safety." "Safety?" The woman's voice rose slightly. "He's dead. What possible danger could there be?" Other guests had turned to watch. Theodore moved smoothly through the crowd toward them. "Mrs. Russo," he said, his tone soothing. "I explained the protocols to your family yesterday. Your father's condition requires specific handling. I know this is difficult, but I must ask you to respect these requirements." Mrs. Russo's face crumpled. "I just want to say goodbye properly." "You can," Theodore assured her. "You can speak to him, tell him anything you need to say, but physical contact must be avoided." She looked back at her father's face, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "Okay," she whispered. "I understand." William released her hand and stepped back slightly, though he remained close. Mrs. Russo spoke quietly to her father for several minutes before finally moving away, accepting comfort from other family members. The rest of the viewing proceeded without incident. At 4 p.m., the guests began to depart. By 4:30, the room was empty except for Theodore, William, Cassandra, and myself. "Marcus, help me close the casket," Theodore said. I approached carefully, aware of William watching from his position near the door. Mr. Castellano looked exactly as he had the night before, peaceful and still. But I remembered those eyes opening, that hand grabbing my wrist, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was somehow aware even now. Theodore placed his hands on the casket lid. Together on 3. 1, 2, 3. We lowered the lid simultaneously. Theodore locked it with the small key, then handed the key to William. "Burial is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Theodore said. "William will transport him to the cemetery tonight and maintain watch until the service." "I'll take him now," William said, moving to help us transfer the casket to a funeral home van in the garage. After William drove away with Mr. Castellano, Theodore gathered Cassandra and me in his office. "You both did well today," he said. Mrs. Russo's reaction was understandable, but potentially dangerous. William's intervention was necessary. What would have happened if she'd touched him? I asked. Theodore and Cassandra exchanged glances. Finally, Theodore said, "Special clients maintain certain connections to their previous lives. Physical contact from family members can strengthen those connections in ways that are unpredictable and often violent. The silk cloth acts as a barrier, but only if it remains undisturbed. You mean he could have hurt her? Or worse, the cloth contains him, keeps his awareness limited. Remove it, or allow prolonged physical contact through it, and Theodore shook his head. Let's just say the rules exist for good reasons. He dismissed us after confirming our schedule for the next week. 3 more special clients were expected over the next 7 days. 3 more chances for something to go wrong. As I drove home that evening, I thought about Mrs. Russo's grief, her desperate need to hold her father's hand one last time. I thought about the rules that prevented that simple comfort, rules that seemed cruel until you understood what they were actually preventing. 6 months suddenly felt like a very long time. Over the next 2 weeks, I settled into a routine at Thornwood & Sons. Regular clients came and went, their preparations following standard procedures I learned from Cassandra. But every few days, a special client would arrive, and the atmosphere in the funeral home would shift. The second special client was a woman in her 70s named Catherine Hayes. Unlike Mr. Castellano, she didn't speak when we prepared her. Instead, she wept constantly, silent tears streaming from open eyes that stared at nothing. The crying continued even after we placed the silk cloth, the wet spots spreading across the blue fabric in dark patches. "Why is she crying?" I asked Cassandra as we worked. Regret, maybe, or fear. Sometimes special clients are trapped in their final emotions. Cassandra's voice was gentle, sympathetic. It's sad, but there's nothing we can do to help them beyond completing our work and letting their families say goodbye. The third special client arrived on a Friday night. The moment the delivery van pulled away, I knew something was different. The casket radiated cold, frost forming on its polished surface despite the warm preparation room. "Rule 8, Cassandra said immediately, already moving toward the door. "Temperature drops mean we leave. Now." We retreated to the hallway, and I watched through the small window as the frost spread from the casket across the floor, up the walls, covering everything in a thin layer of ice. The temperature gauge visible on the far wall dropped rapidly. 60 degrees, 50, 40, 30. "What's happening?" I asked, my breath now visible even in the hallway. Sometimes special clients bring their state with them. Death as cold as absence of warmth. Cassandra pulled out her phone and called Theodore. "We have a code blue in Prep Room 1. Theodore arrived within minutes, William close behind him. William studied the frost-covered room through the window, his expression thoughtful. "How long has it been like this?" he asked. "About 5 minutes," Cassandra replied. William nodded slowly. "Stand back." He opened the door, and a wave of freezing air hit us. William stepped inside without hesitation, moving directly to the casket. He placed both hands on its icy surface and stood perfectly still. Nothing visible changed, but after a minute I noticed the frost had stopped spreading. After 2 minutes, it began to recede. After 3, the temperature gauge started climbing again. William removed his hands from the casket and returned to the hallway, closing the door behind him. His hands were red from the cold, but he showed no other sign of discomfort. "Give it 10 minutes to normalize, then you can proceed," he told us. After he and Theodore left, I looked at Cassandra. What did he do? I don't know. William has abilities that make him useful for this work, but he doesn't explain them. She checked her watch. "We'll wait out here. Rule 8 exists because people used to try to work through the cold. 2, assistants got frostbite so severe they lost fingers. When we finally entered the preparation room again, it was warm and normal. The special client turned out to be a man in his 40s who had died in winter, lost in a blizzard. The cold had followed him, Theodore explained later, an echo of his death clinging to his body. We prepared him carefully, following all the protocols. He never opened his eyes or spoke, but the air around him remained chilly even under the silk cloth, as if his personal winter couldn't be fully contained. 3 weeks into my employment, I was starting to feel confident about the rules and procedures. That confidence shattered on a Tuesday night when everything went wrong at once. It started normally enough. Cassandra and I were preparing a special client, a young man, barely 30, who had died in a car accident. He'd been talking since we opened his casket, asking questions about his family, about how he looked, whether they'd be proud of him at his funeral. "Your family will remember you with love," Cassandra assured him, applying makeup to cover the worst of the accident damage. "You're going to look just fine." The young man's eyes found me. "And you? Marcus Chen? What does your family think of this work you're doing?" "They don't really know the details," I admitted, remembering Rule 3. "They know I work at a funeral home to pay off debt, but not about special clients. Smart, some secrets should stay secret." His eyes closed briefly, then opened again. "My name is Brian Walsh, by the way, since we're being honest with each other." "It's nice to meet you, Brian," I said, trying to sound normal despite the surreal nature of conversing with a dead man. "Tell me something, Marcus. If you could ask your father one question, what would it be?" The question caught me off guard. I started to deflect, but Rule 3 demanded honesty. I'd ask him why he threw everything away for gambling, why he put us in this position. Brian's expression softened with something like understanding. Addiction is a disease. Maybe he couldn't help it. That doesn't make it hurt less. "No," Brian agreed. "It doesn't." We continued working in silence for a while. At 10:45 p.m., we'd nearly finished when an alarm suddenly blared through the building. Red emergency lights began flashing in the corridor outside. Cassandra's head snapped up, her face going pale. "That's the main vault." "What's the main vault?" I asked, confused. She was already moving toward the door. "Where they keep the ones who can't be viewed, the dangerous ones. Someone just opened it." We rushed into the hallway, following the sound of the alarm toward the back of the building. Theodore and William appeared from different directions, converging on a door I'd never noticed before, hidden behind a maintenance closet. The door stood open, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. The alarm source was somewhere below, echoing up from depths I hadn't known the funeral home possessed. "Stay here," William commanded, but Theodore was already descending the stairs. William followed, and after a moment's hesitation, so did Cassandra. I couldn't make myself stay behind, so I went too. The stairs led to a basement level I'd never seen. A long corridor stretched ahead, lined with heavy metal doors on both sides. Each door had a small window at eye level, and each window had been covered from the inside with something dark. All except one. The door at the end of the corridor stood open. Through it, I could see another preparation room, much smaller than the one upstairs. A casket sat in the center, its lid torn off and discarded. The blue silk cloth lay shredded on the floor. "No," Theodore breathed. "This isn't possible. The locks are enchanted. No one should have been able to." A sound came from inside the room, wet and organic, like meat being torn from bone. William held up a hand, stopping all of us from moving closer. "Who's in there?" he called out, his voice carrying authority and warning. The wet sound stopped. Silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then a voice answered, and ice ran down my spine because I recognized it. "That you, William? Come see what I found." It was Derek's voice. Derek, who'd been torn apart 2 years ago after removing jewelry from a special client. Derek, whose pieces had been found all over the preparation room. William's expression didn't change, but I saw his hands curl into fists. "That's not Derek. Derek is dead." "So are your special clients," the voice responded, taking on a mocking quality. "But that doesn't stop them from talking, does it?" William looked at Theodore. "Get them out of here." "What about you?" Theodore asked. "I'll handle this, now go." Cassandra grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stairs. Theodore herded us back up, his face grave. Behind us, I heard William enter the room and close the door. Then I heard sounds I couldn't identify and wouldn't want to if I could. We huddled in Theodore's office while terrible noises echoed up from below. Crashes. Something that might have been breaking glass. A roar that didn't sound remotely human. Then, worst of all, silence. 10 minutes passed. 20. Cassandra paced anxiously while Theodore sat stone-faced behind his desk. I stood by the window, watching the street outside and wondering if I should run, just get in my car and drive and never come back. But I thought of my mother and Lauren. Thought of the house that would be taken if I broke my contract. Thought of the penalties Theodore had mentioned for early termination. At 35 minutes, William emerged from the maintenance closet, pulling the hidden door shut behind him. His suit was torn in several places, and dark stains covered his clothes that might have been blood. But he walked steadily, showing no sign of injury. He entered Theodore's office and closed the door behind him. "It's contained. How did it get out?" Theodore demanded. "Those locks were picked. Someone in this building let it out." William's pale eyes moved to each of us in turn. Someone who knew where to find the key to the maintenance door. Someone who knew about the vault and what it contained. "You think one of us did this?" Cassandra's voice was sharp with offense. "Why would we?" "I'm not accusing anyone yet, but there are only 5 people who work nights at Thornwood & Sons. Theodore, me, Cassandra, Marcus, and Ronald from the janitorial staff. It had to be one of us." "Ronald has been with us for 15 years, Theodore protested. "He's absolutely trustworthy." "Then that leaves our 2 preparation room assistants." William's gaze locked on me, and I felt the weight of his suspicion like a physical thing. "Marcus is new. He hasn't proven himself yet." "I didn't do anything," I said, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. "I didn't even know there was a vault down there until tonight." "Convenient," William said. "Or true. I'll be investigating, and until I know for certain who opened that vault, everyone is a suspect." He left without another word. Theodore dismissed us after making it clear we were to speak to no one about what had happened. "This matter is internal and will remain internal." Cassandra and I finished preparing Brian Walsh in tense silence. He'd stopped talking during the chaos, his eyes now closed as if he'd decided to be genuinely dead. I was grateful for the reprieve from conversation. At 3:00 a.m., after Brian was safely back in his casket and locked away, I finally asked Cassandra what I'd been afraid to ask. "What was in that vault? What got out?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, "The ones who don't transition properly. Special clients who become more than just aware, dangerous, violent. We keep them locked away because they can't be safely viewed or buried. And Derek? Whatever came back wearing Derek's body is one of those things. It should have been locked away permanently." Her hands shook slightly as she removed her gloves. "William contained it, but containment isn't the same as destruction. It's still down there. Why not destroy it? Because we don't know how. No one does. All we can do is lock them away and pray the locks hold." I drove home as the sun rose, my mind churning with everything that had happened. Someone had deliberately released whatever Derek had become. Someone with access to the funeral home who knew about the vault and wanted that thing free. Why? What possible motivation could there be for unleashing such danger? The next few days were tense. William conducted interviews with everyone, but his investigation seemed to hit dead ends. No one admitted to anything. No evidence pointed clearly to anyone. Meanwhile, special clients continued to arrive, and we continued to prepare them. I learned to recognize the signs of talkers versus silent ones, cold ones versus warm ones. I learned which questions I could ask and which I should avoid. I learned to keep my eyes lowered when working, to never let curiosity override caution. 5 weeks into my employment, a special client arrived who changed everything. The delivery came at 2 a.m., later than usual. The men in dark suits brought in a casket that looked ancient, covered in dust and cobwebs. The whole delivery felt wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. "This one's from deep storage," Theodore explained, which was apparently significant, though he didn't elaborate. "Very old contract. The family just located the body." Cassandra looked at the casket with obvious distrust. "How old?" "The contract dates to 1924. 100 years?" I couldn't keep the shock out of my voice. "This person has been special for 100 years?" The body was preserved but not prepared. Now the family wants proper closure. Theodore checked his notes. "Standard protocol applies, just be careful." When we opened the casket, I understood his caution immediately. The woman inside looked to be in her 30s, dressed in a style from the 1920s. But her eyes weren't just open. They glowed faintly in the dim light, an eerie blue-white phosphorescence that didn't come from any external source. "Hello," she said before we'd even begun our work. Her voice was accented from a time when people spoke differently. "How long has it been?" Cassandra consulted the paperwork. "You died in 1924, ma'am. It's now 2024. A century." The woman processed this information with surprising calm. "I thought it might be. The world feels different." Those glowing eyes found me. "And you are?" "Marcus Chen," I said, remembering that lying to special clients was forbidden. "I'm going to help prepare you for your viewing." "Marcus Chen, Chinese ancestry?" "Yes, ma'am." "How wonderful. When I was alive, people like you weren't allowed in places like this." She said it matter-of-factly, without malice, just stating what she knew to be true in her time. The world has changed then. Changed for the better in that regard, at least. We began the preparation work. Unlike other special clients, this woman remained conversational throughout, asking questions about the modern world, about technology and politics and culture. She seemed genuinely curious, not threatening. "My name is Evelyn Bradford," she told us. "In life, I ran a speakeasy during Prohibition. I died when rival bootleggers firebombed my establishment. I remember the flames, the screams, the heat. Then, awareness in darkness, for what felt like forever." "I'm sorry," Cassandra said gently. "That must have been terrible." "It was, but consciousness persists, doesn't it? Even when everything else is taken away." Evelyn's glowing eyes watched our hands as we worked. "Tell me something, Marcus Chen. Why are you really here, not just at this funeral home, but in this particular moment, preparing the long dead at 2 in the morning?" Rule 3 compelled honesty. My father owed money, gambling debts. This job pays enough to clear those debts in 6 months. "Ah, family obligation, a noble reason." She was quiet for a moment. "My father gambled too. Lost our family's dry goods store to a crooked card game. I understood from a young age that some men are weak, and their weakness becomes their family's burden." "Yes," I agreed, grateful that someone understood. "Be careful, Marcus Chen. Funeral homes that cater to special clientele attract special problems. Not everything here is what it seems." Before I could ask what she meant, Cassandra's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, her expression tightening. We need to pause." "Why?" I asked. She showed me the message from Theodore. "Code Violet, secure all special clients and report to my office immediately." Code Violet wasn't one I'd been trained on. That worried me. We quickly placed the silk cloth over Evelyn Bradford, though those glowing eyes remained visible through the fabric, creating an eerie blue shimmer. "I'll be here when you return," Evelyn said calmly. "I've waited a century. I can wait a little longer." We rushed to Theodore's office, where we found him and William huddled over a laptop showing security footage. They looked up as we entered. "Another incident in the vault," Theodore said without preamble. This time, whoever did it was caught on camera. He turned the laptop so we could see the screen. The footage showed the hidden door behind the maintenance closet. The timestamp read 1:47 a.m., just minutes before Evelyn Bradford's delivery. A figure approached the door, face obscured by a hood. The person produced a key, unlocked the door, and descended into the vault level. 17 minutes later, the same figure emerged and locked the door behind them. "Can you identify them?" Cassandra asked. William rewound the footage, pausing on the clearest frame of the figure. The hood still obscured most of the face, but something was visible. A bracelet on the person's left wrist. Silver, with distinctive charms. Cassandra's breath caught. I looked at her and saw the color draining from her face. "That's your bracelet," William said quietly. "The one your brother gave you before his surgery." Cassandra stared at the screen. "That's not me. I didn't go down there. I was in the preparation room with Marcus the entire time." "Were you?" William's tone was gentle but relentless. "Marcus, can you confirm Cassandra was with you at 1:47 a.m.? I tried to remember. We'd been working on a regular client then, finishing up before Evelyn's arrival. Had Cassandra stepped out? Gone to the bathroom or to get supplies?" I think so," I said, but uncertainty crept into my voice. There might have been a few minutes when she wasn't in the room. "I went to get more suture thread," Cassandra protested. "I was gone maybe 3 minutes. Not enough time to—" "The vault entrance is 30 seconds from the preparation room," William interrupted. 17 minutes down and back plus whatever you did down there. You could have made that timing work if you were quick." "But I didn't," Cassandra's voice rose. "Someone is framing me. Maybe they stole my bracelet or—" "Show me your wrist," William commanded. Cassandra slowly pulled back her sleeve, revealing her bare left wrist. The bracelet was gone. "When did you last see it?" Theodore asked. "Yesterday, I took it off, before washing up after work and put it in my locker. I always do that." She looked genuinely frightened now. "Someone must have taken it from there." "Who else knows your locker combination?" William pressed. "Just me, and maybe Theodore since he has master codes for everything." All eyes turned to Theodore, who held up his hands. "I've been in this office or the viewing rooms all night. The cameras will show that." William pulled up more footage, confirming Theodore's movements. He'd been visible on camera constantly, never going near the maintenance closet or the preparation room level. "That leaves Marcus and Ronald," William said. "Ronald went home at midnight before this incident, and Marcus claims he was with Cassandra. I was with her," I insisted. "Mostly. But I didn't go near the vault either. I don't even know where her locker is." "This is getting us nowhere." Theodore stood, rubbing his temples. "William, increase security on the vault level. I want cameras on every possible entrance. Cassandra, you're suspended until we resolve this. Marcus, you'll work with William directly for now." "Suspended?" Cassandra looked devastated. "But I need this job. My brother will continue receiving his care," Theodore assured her. but I can't have you working with special clients while you're under suspicion. I'm sorry, Cassandra. It's for everyone's safety." After Cassandra left, escorted out by William, I stood alone in Theodore's office, feeling like the ground had shifted under my feet. My partner was gone. I'd be working directly with William, who clearly didn't trust me, and someone was still out there, deliberately sabotaging the funeral home's security. "Go finish with Miss Bradford," Theodore said. "William will join you shortly." I returned to the preparation room where Evelyn Bradford waited beneath her silk cloth. Those glowing eyes tracked my movement as I entered alone. "Your partner is gone," she observed. "I heard shouting." "Yes," I said, not sure how much to reveal. "Someone is playing a dangerous game," Evelyn continued, releasing what should stay contained, framing the innocent. Classic misdirection. "Do you know who?" I asked, desperately hoping her century of awareness had given her some insight. "Not who, but I know why." Her voice dropped lower. "Someone wants chaos, Marcus Chen, wants the rules to break down, wants the barriers between states of being to dissolve. When I was alive, I met people like that. Occultists who thought death was just another door to walk through. That's insane. Is it? Look where you are. Look what you're doing. Preparing the dead who aren't quite dead, who exist between worlds, who break natural laws by their very existence. Is it so crazy to think someone might want to tear down the walls, keeping them contained?" Before I could respond, William entered. His pale eyes assessed the situation, me alone with an unsecured special client, and he moved immediately to help complete our work. We finished preparing Evelyn Bradford in silence. She'd stopped talking, her glowing eyes closing as we positioned her properly beneath the silk cloth. But just before William locked her casket, she opened her eyes one more time. "Be careful, Marcus Chen," she whispered. "The person doing this is closer than you think." Over the following week, I worked every shift with William. It was uncomfortable and tense. He watched my every movement, questioned my every decision, and made it clear he still considered me a potential suspect. But working closely with him also taught me things. I saw how he interacted with special clients, the calm authority that kept even the most aggressive ones contained. I watched him handle a Code Blue situation single-handedly, somehow warming a cold client through nothing but his presence and will. I learned that William wasn't entirely human either, though what he was remained a mystery. "You have questions," William said one night as we cleaned the preparation room after finishing with a talker who'd wanted to dictate letters to family members. "A lot of questions," I admitted. "Ask one. I'll decide if I answer." "What are you? You're not a regular person." William considered this. "I'm a guardian. My kind has existed as long as yours has, maybe longer. We maintain boundaries between what should be separate, life and death, physical and spiritual. When those boundaries weaken, we strengthen them. So you're not human. I was once, long ago, but I chose a different path." He met my eyes directly. "Every choice has a cost, Marcus. I paid mine to gain what I needed to do this work." "What was the cost?" "That's your second question. I only promised one answer." But his expression softened slightly. "Humanity. I gave up being fully human to become something that can touch both sides of the boundary. It's lonely, but necessary." I thought about that as we locked up for the night. William had sacrificed his humanity to become a guardian. Cassandra was sacrificing 2 years to save her brother. I was sacrificing 6 months to save my family. Everyone at Thornwood & Sons had made sacrifices. The question was whether those sacrifices would be worth it, or whether we'd all be consumed by the dangers we were trying to contain. On my 45th night of work, everything came to a head. It started when William and I arrived to find Theodore already in the preparation room, standing over an open casket. The special client inside was a man in his 50s, but something about him was different from all the others I'd prepared. His eyes weren't just open, they were aware in a way that suggested full consciousness, not the limited awareness of most special clients. And when those eyes found me, they widened with recognition. "Marcus," the man said, his voice strong and clear. "My boy. You look so much like your mother." My stomach dropped. "Who are you?" "You don't recognize your own uncle? I'm Daniel Chen, your father's older brother." I'd never met my father's brother. Dad had told me Daniel died in a car accident before I was born. But looking at this man's face, I could see the family resemblance. The same nose, the same jawline that I saw in old photos of my father. "You're supposed to be dead," I whispered. "I am dead, Marcus. Died 32 years ago, but I made certain arrangements before that, arrangements that kept me aware, waiting." Daniel's eyes moved to Theodore. The contract was specific. My body was to be preserved until my nephew turned 23 and faced a crisis that could destroy his family. Then I was to be brought here, to this place, so I could help. "I don't understand," I said. "Your father's debts weren't random, Marcus. They were engineered. Someone wanted David Chen desperate enough to accept terrible terms. Wanted him to put his family in such a position that you'd have no choice but to come work here." Daniel's gaze moved to William. "Someone at this very funeral home." William's expression didn't change, but I saw his posture shift subtly into something more defensive. "That's quite an accusation." "Not an accusation, a fact." Daniel's eyes blazed with that eerie awareness. "You've been here 30 years, William. 30 years, maintaining boundaries, you said. But what if you weren't just maintaining them? What if you were testing them, seeing how far they could be pushed?" "You're confused," William said calmly. "Death does that sometimes. Memories get twisted. My memories are perfectly intact. I remember everything, including the contract I made with Theodore's father. He promised that if I became a special client voluntarily, if I let myself die with certain rituals performed, I'd be preserved in awareness until my family needed me most. Daniel tried to move but couldn't, trapped by his body's limitations. I've been in storage for 32 years, William, conscious in darkness. Do you know what that's like? Do you know what I heard down there in that vault?" My blood ran cold. "You were in the vault? One of the dangerous ones." "Not dangerous by choice, Marcus. Dangerous because I knew too much. Because I figured out what William was doing." Daniel's gaze never left William. The special clients who became violent, who had to be locked away, they weren't transitioning poorly, they were being corrupted. Someone was deliberately destabilizing them, seeing what would happen when the barriers broke down completely. "That's insane," I said, but even as I spoke, pieces were clicking together in my mind. The vault being opened repeatedly, the thing wearing Derek's body, Cassandra being framed. William's been protecting us. He's contained every incident. Has he? Or has he been cleaning up his own experiments? Daniel's voice grew urgent. "Think, Marcus. Why would someone frame Cassandra? Because she was getting close to figuring it out. She'd been working here 2 years, long enough to notice patterns. The special clients who became violent, they all had one thing in common. William prepared every single one of them, alone, before they were locked away." I looked at William, my mentor for the past 6 weeks, the guardian who'd taught me how to handle special clients, the protector who'd contained every dangerous situation. "Is this true?" William was silent for a long moment. Then, to my horror, He smiled. It was a cold expression, nothing like the careful neutrality he usually maintained. "You understand, then," William said, not to me, but to Daniel. "Impressive. Most special clients lose coherence after a few years, 32 years of consciousness, and you still retain analytical thinking. You might be the most successful subject yet." "Subject?" Theodore's voice cracked like a whip. He'd been standing silently near the door, but now he moved forward, his face pale. "William, what is he talking about? You really didn't know?" William looked almost disappointed. "Theodore, your father knew. He and I had an arrangement. He provided the bodies, the special clients, and I conducted my research. In exchange, I protected his business, kept the dangerous ones contained, maintained the illusion of safety. My father would never. Your father was a practical man. He understood that knowledge has value, understanding the boundary between life and death, learning to control it, that's worth more than one funeral home's reputation." William moved toward the door, casually positioning himself between us and the exit. "When he died and you took over, I simply didn't mention the arrangement. You were so focused on honoring his legacy, maintaining his contracts, you never questioned the deeper purposes." My mind reeled. "The vault incidents, Cassandra's bracelet, you orchestrated all of it?" "The bracelet was borrowed while she showered in the staff bathroom. Easy enough to plant at the vault entrance and retrieve before anyone looked too closely." William's pale eyes settled on me. "And you, Marcus. Your father's gambling debts weren't random. I have connections to the organizations he borrowed from. It was simple to encourage them to pressure him, to offer him a very specific deal involving his son working here." "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Why me?" "Because you're young, desperate, and you have the right bloodline. The Chen family has always had a sensitivity to the boundary. Your uncle proved that by successfully maintaining consciousness for 3 decades. I wanted to see if you had the same gift." William tilted his head, studying me, like I was a specimen. "And you do. You've adapted to special clients faster than any assistant I've trained. You can feel them, can't you? Their awareness, their presence between states." He was right, though I'd never articulated it before. I could sense special clients in ways Cassandra couldn't. I knew when they were about to speak before they opened their mouths. I could feel the cold ones approaching before the temperature dropped. "The goal was always to recruit you," William continued, "to train you, then offer you a choice. Remain human and finish your 6 months, or let me show you what you could become. A guardian like me, able to touch both sides of the boundary, to control it rather than just maintain it. By corrupting special clients? Theodore demanded. By creating monsters? By understanding the mechanism. Special clients exist in a liminal state. With the right application of will and knowledge, that state can be manipulated, expanded. Some subjects become violent, unfortunate, but those are contained. Others, William gestured to Daniel. Others maintain perfect consciousness for decades. Imagine what we could learn from them. Imagine what could be achieved if we truly understood death. This is madness, Aida and Eva Marit. You're experimenting on the dead. I'm experimenting on the not quite dead. There's a difference. William's expression hardened. And now we have a problem. You all know too much. Daniel has revealed secrets that should have stayed buried. Theodore moved slowly toward a drawer in the preparation room cabinet. I knew what he kept there, a pistol, for emergencies he'd never fully explained. William, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This employment is terminated immediately. I don't think so. William didn't move, but suddenly the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost spread across the walls, the floor, the ceiling. My breath came out in visible clouds. I've spent 30 years establishing myself here, building my research. I'm not leaving because you finally discovered what your father already knew and accepted. The lights flickered. In the casket, Daniel's eyes glowed brighter. William, you made a mistake. You brought Marcus here, thinking you could control him. But the Chen bloodline doesn't just sense the boundary. We can influence it. I know, William said. That's why he's valuable. Then you should also know that I've been teaching him. Every special client he's prepared, I was there in the vault, projecting my awareness, showing him things through their eyes, teaching him what our family can do. Daniel's voice strengthened despite his immobile body. Marcus, remember the cold client, the one William contained? I did remember, the frost spreading, William touching the casket, the temperature normalizing. At the time, I'd thought William was fixing the problem, but now, you weren't warming him, I said slowly. You were feeding on him, taking his energy, his state of being, to strengthen yourself. Very good. William's smile returned. Special clients are resources, Marcus. Their liminal energy can be harvested, used. That's what Guardians do. We feed on the boundary to maintain our position between states. That's not what Guardians do, Daniel corrected. Real Guardians protect the boundary. They don't exploit it. You're not a Guardian, William. You're a parasite. The frost intensified. Ice crystals formed on William's skin, but he didn't seem bothered. Call me what you like. The fact remains that I'm stronger than all of you combined. Theodore can't shoot me. Bullets don't work particularly well on someone who's already mostly dead. Marcus is untrained. And you, Daniel, are locked in a corpse that can't move. But I'm not alone, Daniel said. The door behind William exploded inward. Cassandra stood there, flanked by two figures I'd never seen before. A woman in her 60s with iron gray hair and a younger man covered in tattoos that seemed to writhe across his skin. Cassandra? I stared at her. How did you? I told her, Daniel said. While you were all focused on William, I was projecting my awareness to her, explaining everything. She's been gathering help. The older woman stepped forward, her eyes assessing William with professional detachment. William Ashford, you've broken the covenant. Elena Morales. William didn't sound concerned. I wondered when the council would finally notice. The council notices everything eventually. Elena's voice carried absolute authority. You were granted guardianship 34 years ago with specific limitations. You were to maintain boundaries, not exploit them. You were to protect special clients, not experiment on them. The council's rules are outdated, William said. They're afraid of progress, of understanding. I've learned more about the boundary in 30 years than the council has in centuries, and violated every principle of guardianship in the process. The tattooed man moved to Elena's other side, and I noticed his tattoos were actually sigils, protective symbols that glowed faintly in the cold. Your license is revoked. Come peacefully or be taken by force. William laughed, and the sound raised the hair on my neck. You think you can force me. I've consumed the energy of dozens of special clients. I've made myself stronger than any single guardian. Then it's good we brought 3, Elena said calmly. She and the tattooed man moved in perfect synchronization. The sigils on his skin blazed bright, and Elena's hands began to glow with pale light. Together, they advanced on William. What happened next defied description. William's form seemed to split, like he was existing in multiple states simultaneously. The room's temperature fluctuated wildly, freezing, then burning hot, then freezing again. Shadows moved against the light, shapes that hurt to look at directly. "Marcus, get down," Daniel shouted. I dropped behind one of the preparation tables just as something that might have been William and might have been something else entirely passed through the space where I'd been standing. The table's metal surface frosted over, then melted, then frosted again. Through the chaos, I could hear Elena and the tattooed man chanting in a language I didn't recognize. The words seemed to create structure in the air, invisible barriers that contained William's wild transformations. Theodore had his gun out, but clearly didn't know what to shoot at. Cassandra stayed in the doorway, one hand gripping the frame so hard her knuckles were white. "Marcus," Daniel's voice cut through the noise. "The silk cloth, use it." I didn't understand, but I grabbed the blue silk cloth from its shelf. The material felt warm in my hands, almost alive, the silver threads creating patterns that seemed to shift and change. "Cover William with it," Daniel commanded. "The cloth contains liminal energy. It'll limit his access to the boundary." That sounded insane, but I was well past questioning things that sounded insane. I waited for an opening, for a moment when William's form stabilized enough to target. It came when Elena and the tattooed man completed their chant. For just a second, William solidified, looking fully human and completely vulnerable. I threw the cloth. It spread in midair, much larger than it should have been, and settled over William like a net. The moment it touched him, he screamed. Not a human sound, something deeper, more primal. The sound of something being torn away from what it had claimed. The cloth tightened, wrapping William in its shimmering folds. The frost melted. The temperature normalized. The shadows retreated. In seconds, William was completely contained, a struggling form beneath blue silk. Elena and the tattooed man moved quickly, binding the cloth with more sigils drawn in the air. The glowing symbol settled onto the silk, sealing it closed. "It's done," Elena said, slightly breathless. "He's contained." The room fell silent except for muffled sounds from the cloth. Slowly, we all straightened, assessing the damage. The preparation room looked like a disaster zone. Equipment knocked over, frost damage on the walls, scorch marks on the floor. "What now?" Theodore asked, his voice shaking. "Now we take him before the council," Elena said. "He'll be judged for his violations and sentenced accordingly." "What kind of sentence?" I asked. "For crimes this severe? Complete dissolution. His consciousness will be scattered, his connection to all boundaries severed. He'll cease to exist in any meaningful sense." Elena looked at me with something like sympathy. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this, Marcus Chen. William manipulated many people to serve his purposes." "My father's debts," I said. "If William arranged them, if this was all manufactured, then those debts are invalid," Elena finished. "The council will handle the cleanup. Your family's financial obligations will be erased." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I just felt exhausted and used. 6 weeks of my life dedicated to a lie, to serving someone's twisted experiment. "What about the special clients William corrupted?" Cassandra asked. "The ones in the vault? We'll evaluate each one. Some may be able to transition properly now that William's influence is removed. Others?" Elena shook her head. "Some damage can't be undone. They'll need to remain contained." The tattooed man had been examining Daniel's casket. "This one is remarkable. 32 years of stable consciousness with no corruption. How?" "Strong will," Daniel said, "and family purpose. I maintained myself because I knew my nephew would eventually need me. Love is a powerful anchor." "Indeed it is." Elena approached the casket. "Daniel Chen, you've served your purpose. Would you like to transition fully now?" Move beyond the boundary to wherever consciousness goes after death. Yes, Daniel said softly. I'm very tired, and I've done what I needed to do. Wait, I said, moving to his side. I never knew you. I never got to hear your stories, learn about your life. Daniel's glowing eyes found mine, and for the first time, I saw warmth in them. You have your father's kindness, Marcus. That's worth more than stories. Take care of your mother and sister. Be the man your father couldn't quite manage to be. I will, I promised. Elena placed her hands on Daniel's forehead. She spoke words in that same unknown language, gentle this time, soothing. The glow faded from Daniel's eyes. His features relaxed into genuine peace. His awareness, that presence I'd felt since opening his casket, simply dissolved. He was finally completely dead. He's transitioned, Elena confirmed. You can bury him with traditional methods now. Over the next few days, the council representatives cleaned up William's mess. They evaluated every special client in the vault, released the 3 who could transition properly, and arranged for permanent containment of the others. They investigated the funeral home's operations and cleared Theodore of any knowing participation in William's experiments. My father knew, Theodore told me one evening as we stood in his office. I found his journals. He and William had an agreement, just like William said. Dad justified it as necessary research, as advancing human understanding of death. But it was wrong. I should have questioned things more carefully. You trusted someone you thought was trustworthy, I said. That's not a crime. No, but it's a failure of responsibility. Theodore looked older than he had 6 weeks ago, worn down by revelations. I'm shutting down the special client program. No more contracts for liminal preservation. The people who've already transitioned that way will receive proper care, but we won't accept new ones. What about your business? Thornwood and Sons will continue as a regular funeral home. We've been here 100 years. We'll adapt. He smiled wearily. And we'll need good staff. If you'd like to continue working here under normal circumstances, the job is yours. I thought about it. The funeral home held terrible memories now, but also moments of unexpected grace. Helping families say goodbye, treating the deceased with dignity, learning that even death could be handled with care and respect. I'll think about it, I said. Right now, I need to go home and be with my family. My mother cried when I told her the debts were cleared, that the threat to our house was gone. Lauren demanded the full story, and I gave her an edited version that left out the worst details. They didn't need to know about William's experiments or Daniel's sacrifice. They just needed to know we were safe. A week after William's capture, Cassandra called me. Hey, how are you holding up? Better than I expected, I admitted. You? Same. Elena offered me a position with the council. Apparently, my resistance to William's manipulation impressed them. She laughed. Turns out, I'm naturally good at blocking psychic influence. Who knew? You're going to take it? I think so. My brother's doing well, the medical bills are handled, and this seems like meaningful work. Plus, the pay is excellent. She paused. What about you? Theodore said you might stay at Thornwood and Sons. I'm considering it. Not the special clients part, that's done, but regular funeral work, helping families through grief, making sure people are honored in death. That seems worth doing. It is, Cassandra agreed. And Marcus? Thank you. You threw that cloth when it mattered. You saved us all. Daniel told me what to do. You trusted him and acted. That took courage. Her voice softened. You're going to be okay, we all are. After we hung up, I sat in my room thinking about the past 6 weeks. About special clients who spoke from death. about rules that existed for terrible reasons, about a man who'd sacrificed his humanity for power and another who'd sacrificed his peace for family. I thought about the boundary between life and death, that liminal space where awareness persisted against all natural law. William had tried to exploit it. Daniel had used it to protect his family. The difference, I realized, was purpose. Power for its own sake corrupted, power for love redeemed. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Elena Morales. The council would like to speak with you about your abilities. No obligation, just a conversation. Let me know if you're interested." I stared at the message for a long time. I had abilities. I'd proven that. The Chen bloodline had sensitivity to the boundary, connection to liminal spaces. I could feel the dead who weren't quite dead. I could sense awareness where others saw only corpses. The question was, what I'd do with that gift. Follow Theodore's path and help people with normal funeral services, join Cassandra and work for the council, or forge something entirely new. I didn't have to decide immediately. The debts were cleared. My family was safe. For the first time in months, I had actual choices rather than desperate obligations. I looked out my window at the neighborhood where I'd grown, up where my mother and sister still lived, where my father's mistakes had nearly destroyed everything. The sun was setting, that liminal time between day and night when the world existed in transition. Beautiful things could happen in liminal spaces, I'd learned. Terrible things too, but mostly they were spaces of possibility, of change, of transformation. I typed a response to Elena. "I'm interested. Let's talk." Then I went downstairs to have dinner with my family, grateful to be alive, grateful to be home, and strangely grateful even for the experiences that had brought me to this moment. The boundary between life and death would always exist. Someone had to guard it. Someone had to protect those who existed in between. Maybe, eventually, that someone would be me, but not yet, not until I was ready. For now, I was just Marcus Chen, 23 years old, finally free of debts and full of possibilities, and that was enough. And that's how it ended, or so we assume for now. If this tale kept you on edge, like and share it with a friend who dares to listen, then subscribe for more eerie nights like this one. Thanks for unwinding with me. Sleep tight if you can, and remember, follow the rules. Always.